Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome from spring break. I hope you had some good rest. And for those of us that are joining online, good day from wherever you're joining us from. And welcome again to the Tsujimoto Perspectives in Global Development Seminar Series. I have a couple of announcements and housekeeping items before we introduce our speaker today. So the first one is that we have next week, we're holding our Distinguished Speaker in Global Development, and that's going to be by Juan Lucas Restrepo, who is the Director General of the Alliance Biodiversity and CIAT. This is a CGR center with global presence in more than 60 countries around the world. He'll be with us on campus, sharing some perspectives on balancing ecosystem preservation and food security. There is a few slots that are still open for students who would like to sign up to have a conversation with him after lunch. So I encourage you to follow the queue from Muti, our class TA, to sign up for that meeting with the speaker after the seminar next week. And please feel free to spread the word about this distinguished speaker. The second announcement is that we do have a very special guest in the room today that I'm going to introduce before we get to our seminar today. I would like to introduce Mr. Mark Tsujimoto. Yes, the same Tsujimoto after whose seminar this is named after, and also the little plaza in front of Man Library. You might have seen that name. Mr. Mark Tsujimoto is a trustee of his late Auntie Grace Cassie's estate and a dedicated steward to his family's legacy at Cornell University. He's a retired minister to children and youth in Daly City, California. And he has thoughtfully directed the philanthropic support in ways that reflect the values and experiences of the Tsujimoto family. This seminar series, as you know, is named in honor of Mark's father, Joshua Tsujimoto, Cornell in class of 1949, and his uncle, Harry Tsujimoto, Cornell 1951, both of whom graduated from Cornell's College of Agriculture and Life Sciences after being incarcerated during World War II in a Japanese internment camp. Their time at Cornell was a pivotal moment, opening doors to lives and the service and scholarship and lasting impact. We're delighted that he could be on campus today, and we invite him to share a few remarks about the family story. And I would invite Mr. Mark Tsujimoto to share a few words before we introduce our speaker. Mark?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here today. And I'd like to talk about Harry and Josh, extraordinary, ordinary lives, two Cornell farm boys who made it good. This is their parents, Miki and Roy. They were immigrated from Japan. Roy came first. He got established, returned to Japan, married Miki. They're what they call Issei, first generation. They had limited English, and they were culturally Japanese, but they were very proud to be living in America. And they deeply appreciated the opportunities and the freedom that this country afforded them. They started with, Roy started with nothing, but he saved his money frugally. And pretty soon they had a dairy farm, and then the Depression wiped that out, but then they switched over to vegetables. And this farm is in El Centro, California, in the Imperial Valley, right near the Mexican border. You can see that they have a Japanese garden, but it's Americanized, right? And they are dressed in American clothes, so they have this kind of hybrid identity. And these are the three brothers. So, my father, Josh, Harry was the youngest, and there was another brother, Roy, in the middle. But there's a lot of, when they were growing up, there was tremendous amount of persecution of Asians in general, Japanese Americans in particular. Federal state law limited immigration. They had to register every year. Federal law prohibited Asians from becoming naturalized citizens, and state laws prevented Asian non-citizens from owning land. So my father was born in 1920. Roy had to rent land before, but as soon as my father was born, since he was his citizenship was established through being born, he was able to own land. So my father, the minute he was born, they bought land, and he was a landowner while he was a baby. Japanese Americans were seen as the yellow peril, a national security threat, not really American, nor could they ever really be American, not to be trusted. The FBI compiled lists of Japanese American leaders before Pearl Harbor. So you see this anti-Japanese racism. Interesting enough, this cartoon, it's kind of a racist cartoon, was created by Dr. Seuss of green eggs and ham and all that type of thing. Later, he deeply regretted these pictures and apologized for it, but that was part of the ethos at the time. Pearl Harbor happens, Executive Order 9066, military exclusion zone. They're given 7 to 10 days to prepare for a move. They were allowed to take only what a person could carry in their hands. In large cities, they were taken first to assembly centers, and 120,000 were interned in 10 camps. The Tsujimoto family sent to post in Arizona. This is a picture of one of the camps. There were barbed wire, guard towers with machine guns, very regulated life. It was all taken away from them. They were forced to hear no due process. You had 1% Japanese blood, you were considered Japanese, and you were subject to being incarcerated. Eventually, the government realized it was, not necessary thing to do, so they allowed them to leave. Family was sponsored by a minister in Buffalo, New York, and so the family was able to move. They had a good neighbor who looked out for their interests, protected their farm, made sure the mortgage payment got made sure that the property taxes were paid. And they had, so when the family moved, they actually had farm equipment that they could ship clear across the country and get reestablished in Western New York. This is the family farm in Rice Road in Elma, New York. After 2.5 years, Harry enters East Aurora High School. He graduates, gets his BS from Cornell, studies at Berkeley, and gets his MS. There's a couple pictures from my father and his brother. They were in Cornell at roughly the same time, and kind of pictures of them and their friends hanging out. Harry's path is to become a scientist. Cornell set him up to be a scientist. He worked in the lab of Professor Daniel Arnon, doing fundamental research in photosynthesis. He published his 29 research papers during the career. Lab was nominated for a Nobel Prize, but the award was given to a neighboring lab in the same department, which kind of irked my uncle to this dying day. He married Grace Kase, who was a realtor, and together they built a thriving real estate business in commercial like apartment buildings. They had mass holdings worth $20 million. So Harry would work at the lab all day and go home and do repairs. His wife would have a whole list of things for him to do. But they realized as immigrants or children of immigrants that they had to work twice as hard. And so he was willing to work twice as hard. And so he self-trained to basically become a general contractor. My father, Josh, he took a little different route. That's me down there. That's my brother, Paulie, in the middle there. He studied ag, and he was a natural born farmer. And he quickly, opened up, he was entrepreneurial. Every bone of his body was either farmer or entrepreneur. So he created some businesses. And he got but he always had this calling to become an agricultural missionary. He had this spiritual experience when he was in the camps. God made me a farmer. He was an FFA American farmer. But so then eventually he spent the last 25 years of his life serving in Ethiopia, Bangladesh, and Haiti, doing agricultural development work with the poorest farmers. And what motivated them and what motivates me is this Japanese concept that's called own. It's a mixture of gratitude and obligation. They were very grateful for the opportunities they were afforded them, that Cornell took a chance on these two farm boys of questionable loyalty, but Cornell afforded them this opportunity. And my father told me very proudly, he said, I use my Cornell education every day. And so they had a great sense of gratitude for all that Cornell enabled them to do. They could see that Cornell placed them on this trajectory of success. And so that they were grateful for that. And they understood that once somebody does that for you, it creates an obligation. You have to pay it back and you have to pay it forward. That's why we're very proud to be able to establish the scholarships and to fund this seminar program today. So we're here today out of this sense of own. So we're thank you that you're able to attend, and we could hope that you will take lessons from their story and you have develop your own sense of own, that this education that you're getting here is a wonderful privilege, a wonderful opportunity, but also it creates a responsibility. You know, so thank you very much for listening to our family story.
Thank you very much, Mark, both for sharing the story and also for the generosity of your family, and that word on, it will stick with me. So it is through that generosity that we're able to bring such a diversity of speakers from all corners of the world that you get to meet here every week. So arigato, Tsujimoto-san. So yes, before we introduce our speaker today, I also want to acknowledge on Zoom today is the presence of our speaker today is going to be talking on nutrition financing. And every semester we have a speaker who talks on this very important topic of nutrition financing. That is also made possible thanks to Miara Shakura, who was global lead of nutrition at World Bank's Health. She's attending the seminar online today, and she worked on nutrition population growth practice until 2024. And every semester, we're able to bring a special emphasis on this very current topic. Now, for introducing our speaker today, I'll be very brief again because we really want to hear more from her, and I've shared all this information online with all of you. So our speaker today is Kyoko Shibata Okamura, who has over 20 years of experience in global nutrition. Since joining World Bank in 2018, she has co-led policy dialogue and advisory work on nutrition investment, public finance management, obesity prevention, multi-sectoral programs across health, agriculture, and education. She co-edited the investment framework for nutrition in 2024 and advises several global forums, including the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement and Nutrition for Growth. Previously, she worked with UN agencies on large-scale nutrition programs in Ethiopia, Nepal, and Cambodia. And Kyoko wanted to be here in person, but the schedule did not work out, and she's joining us from somewhere in Southeast Asia, right? Kyoko, yes, I'm going to hand over to you. If you can turn on your camera, let's help welcome Kyoko.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I need to pull out my slides. Thank you. And thank you very much for the introduction. I won't do repeat the introduction part, but I just wanted to really thank the Cornell University College of Agriculture and Life Sciences for inviting me. And I'm extremely honored to be here today with Mr. Tsujimoto. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. And Dr. Mira Shaker, my former boss and co-worker at the World Bank, but actually more importantly, as a friend and also as a partner in crime. I love when she says this because Mira works so much and so hard, but she truly enjoys it and gets thrilled when she goes beyond what you are supposed to do as a kind of a good girl. So I really, enjoy hearing this from her, and that means that we have been doing something really strategic and good. So let me put this on the slide show mode. Okay, and the subtitle of my talk today actually reminds me of that. Nutrition as a best by development investment. Here, I made a mistake that the people working in the public institution often do, which is a long title. But I wanted to just the emphasize that this nutrition as a best by development investment was not really talked about 10 to 15 years ago. Nutritionists working in a space would have said nutrition is a human right, which is true. But nobody except Mira really said it's an investment. Now, we just came back from the high-level Nutrition for Growth Summit in Paris, where everybody was using this language, which is not really the case even several years ago. And everybody at the summit talked about how much we are losing if we don't invest in nutrition. This is a very serious and seriously worthy crime she plotted, and we committed together. I'll tell you why. The images on the left are brain of a child who is stunted, meaning chronically malnourished, versus a child who is well cared for. 80% of child's brain development occurs in the first 1,000 days of life from conception to the second birthday. Good nutrition in this window of opportunity makes difference, not only in their immediate and long-term health, but also in school attainment, earning when they become adult, and the chance of escaping poverty, and collectively, countries' human capital and economic growth. There was a study done in a few low and middle-income countries, which estimated that, for example, in Pakistan, the total annual income lost for private sector workforce amounts to as much as $10.6 billion US. So the World Bank developed the concept of human capital and its index. Human capital is broadly defined as the combination of knowledge, skills, and health that we invest in and accumulate to realize individuals' potential as productive members of societies. Nutrition strongly relates to all of the human capital index ingredients on both undernutrition and overweight obesity side. It is essential to improve all types of nutritional deficiencies to protect future human capital and economic productivity. In Africa, for example, a child born in 2020 could only expect to be 40% as productive as she could be on average. In South Asia, it's 48%, while it is 88% in Singapore. On the other hand, obesity is rising rapidly, especially in low and middle income countries, where 2/3 of overweight obese individuals actually live nowadays. And it's costing our society trillions of dollars of economic losses, not only from premature mortality and increased medical care costs, as you imagine, but also labor market impacts through reduced productivity. In 2019, we were already losing $2 trillion a year globally, which is expected to reach $4 trillion by 2030, which is 3% of GDP. And it is equivalent to economic losses due to COVID-19 in 2020. Basically, it's wiping out annual GDP growth in many of those countries. If we don't act on it now, we would be losing as much as $18 trillion per year by 2060. And this has become critically important in low and middle income countries because when food price increases, people, especially consumers with low purchasing power, quickly shift to cheap or cheaper staples and processed foods. Impacts of economic crisis and in food insecurity used to be seen on child undernutrition, such as acute malnutrition that you often see in the media and the pictures, etc. But these days, the situation is much more complex because of rapid changes in food systems, technologies, and availability of ultra-processed foods, even in remote markets and kiosks all over the world that are actually very cheap, but often nutrient empty and unhealthy, leading to increased risks of overweight, obesity, and diet-related NCDs in these crisis contexts. What is added on top of it is impacts of climate change on nutrition. There are several known pathways, including disrupted food systems and reduced crop yields, diminishing nutrient concentrations in crops, and diet shifts as a coping mechanisms when their incomes are reduced. We also know that infectious disease risks increase not only due to environmental causes, but also because women have less time and resources for childcare, and they themselves also suffer from these impacts. We should not forget also that nutrition and food systems also provide climate change mitigation opportunities. Agri-food sector contributes to over 30% of total annual GHG emissions, and ultra-processed food is actually associated with 1/3 of all diet-related emissions in high-income countries. This is probably a well-known fact, but what is less known or recognized is that investing in, for example, exclusive breastfeeding, which already has huge health benefits globally, can be a triple win strategy for health, economy, and environment by reducing production, distribution, and consumption of artificial infant formula. These are the solutions. This is actually something that we need to look at as an investment to have healthier people, healthier economy, and healthier planet for ourselves. Now, against this backdrop, the World Bank recently published the Investment Framework 2024, which aims to serve as a compendium of cost-effective, evidence-based nutrition interventions and policy measures for countries to draw upon and develop or strengthen their multi-sectoral nutrition investments and achieve SDG 2.2. This has been used as a key resource for the Paris N4G Summit. And you see Mira is the one who led this serious crime, which now everybody is talking about. Nutrition is a multi-sectoral investment in nature. And we reviewed all available new and updated evidence in different sectors, such as health, agriculture, social protection, etc., and also the private sector. And we contextualize them as much as possible through service delivery systems, policies and regulations, food systems and climate, and institutions and governance. These are some of the key interventions that are highly cost-effective. I'm not going to read all of these, but for example, in addition to already known cost-effective interventions such as infant and young child feeding counseling, maternity leave protection can improve critical breastfeeding practices. This has not been really looked at as a cost-effective intervention that we invest in, and this requires not only nutrition community, but also multi-sectoral efforts. Iron-fortified foods reduce anemia prevalence, which has been identified as one of the most cost-effective investable development by the Copenhagen Consensus Group in 2008. However, scaling up has been a challenge because it requires private sector investment and strong regulatory mechanisms. Nutrition-sensitive agriculture, nutrition-smart cash transfers, and WASH interventions can all be effective as well if they are well situated in nutrition impact pathways and linked to direct nutrition behavioral change actions. We also looked at policy measures to promote better nutrition and healthier diet. In addition to normative policies, there's an increasing use of policy and fiscal measures to influence social and food environments and commercial determinants. And thanks to development of behavioral change economics, there is a growing body of evidence that shows that effectiveness of these policy measures are proven, and it can actually shape and reorient consumer behaviors. For example, coverage of sugar-sweetened beverage taxes has increased from 40 plus countries in 2019 to more than 100 by 2023, covering 57% of the world's population and 82% in low and middle-income countries. There is strong and consistent evidence that SSB taxes can shift consumers away from these unhealthy products. And evidence also shows that SSB consumption, in fact, is even more tax elastic than tobacco or alcohol. This means that consumers, especially low-income consumers, do respond to even a small change in price when they consume these products. An increasing number of countries are moving into taxing some of the unhealthy food products as well. These tax policies can be more effective if they are packaged with other consumer side policies, such as food labeling and marketing regulations. This is showing various countries and territories implementing such policies. Here also, there's a growing body of evidence suggesting that mandatory labeling policies are more effective than voluntary ones. Now, this is my favorite way of ending this section of the presentation, which talks about policy coherence. In the food supply chain, we, public health specialists, look at this supply chain from the health consequences and consumption side. However, our agriculture colleagues look at it from the production and trade side. We need to meet in between and see how we are consistent and coherent in the policy space. Once we started to really talk about policy coherence internally within our teams, we realized that there's a big flagship agenda called repurposing agriculture subsidies, which can actually benefit people in terms of health. There are more than $800 billion spent globally every year on agri-food public support, including subsidies. And a lot of them are still going to commodities such as sugar, maize, etc., and products that are needed, but not necessarily easily. And actually, those subsidies don't go to the products that are needed, but not necessarily easily affordable to low-income consumers, such as vegetables and fruits. On the other hand, we tax sugar-sweetened beverages and spend a lot of public resources on improving dietary patterns on the consumer side. This big repurposing agenda in the agri-food sector has already kind of incorporated environmental externalities into the equation to come up with more sustainable production. But we need to put health externalities there too, because in the end, we are likely losing economically if we don't optimize the net economic benefit of what our food systems are generating in terms of economies, people, and planet. Now, we know quite well why nutrition is so important economically and what needs to be done, but we also have to think about how, including how to finance it. This is especially important as nutrition has been traditionally financed through humanitarian assistance, which is no longer viable at all. We need to find other ways to finance nutrition interventions sustainably to build the human capital. The investment framework costed a package of evidence-based interventions on undernutrition and micronutrient deficiencies and estimated that an additional $128 billion is required over the next 10 years to fully scale up these interventions globally. Much of it is needed in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. The analysis also estimated that every dollar invested in these interventions can generate as much as $23 in economic returns and collectively saving lives of 6.2 million under 5 children every year. Return of investment on child stunting, for example, is as high as 40.3, and it is 44.4 for exclusive breastfeeding. On overweight and obesity side, we are challenged by a lack of costing data across the world, but with very limited data from OECD, we have a feeling that key policy measures to prevent overweight obesity, such as food labeling and advertising regulations, use of mass media and mobile apps, could actually do not cost much, but can have substantial economic benefits, including especially the labor market impacts. How can we then finance these? Development assistance has completely plateaued at only 0.4% increase for the last several years. This is without any positive outlook going forward, as we all know. On the other side of the coin, the domestic government spending on nutrition remains extremely low at around 3% of domestic health expenditures in low-income countries on average. What concerns me really is that this is even lower in lower middle-income countries shown in the middle, which includes countries like Pakistan and Nigeria, where millions of children are still stunted with a simultaneous rise in overweight, obesity, and non-communicable diseases. And these graphs are actually showing that when country income status goes up from low income to lower middle income to upper middle income, domestic health resource pie increases, which is shown in blue lines. However, the red lines, which is showing the domestic nutritional spending as a share of domestic health spending, doesn't follow the same pattern. It seems that nutrition spending, even when the health spending pie increases, seems to be deprioritized, especially in low and middle income countries. In this situation, we know that it is extremely challenging to fill the financing gaps. Can we be optimistic? Probably yes, probably no. But we strongly believe that there are opportunities and a strategic way forward. We clearly need more money for nutrition, but we also need more nutrition for the money spent. This is again our nutrition financing mantra that Mira had called for the past several years. And now everybody is talking about this. This means that we want to see increased volume of nutrition financing, but we also need to seriously increase spending efficiency. For example, there are opportunities to leverage existing financing in agriculture, health, social protection, and climate, and help countries strategically design their investments to maximize returns on nutrition outcomes. It actually means that nutrition objectives need to be fully integrated in sectoral plans and investments. And these investments are well designed to contribute to nutrition impacts. Otherwise, it's nice to have something called nutrition sensitive interventions. What does it do is questionable. Countries have also studied nutrition responsive public financial management reform to build institutional capacities for more sustainable financing and accountability to results. I know this sounds a little bit boring, kind of technocratic area of work, but it is critical because not many governments even know how much they are spending and how well they are spending on nutrition, because nutrition budgets and investments are spread across different sectors. Nobody monitors it despite the fact that most countries have national nutrition plans and strategies with targets and objectives to achieve. Things that are not measured cannot be managed and cannot be improved. Finally, on the volume side, countries are starting to look at their domestic budgets and also seeking opportunities for concessional financing from multilateral development banks like us, knowing that nutrition investment does have return on investment. At the same time, we have untapped innovative and private sector investments that can improve nutrition outcomes if each one, government, public institutions, private sector, research institutions, and civil society recognize the economic imperative and collectively work towards feeding today and nurturing for tomorrow. I have one more slide, which is another joint crime with Mira. We worked on identifying several innovative financing opportunities, ranging from gifts and donations to pay for results payment mechanisms, market guarantees to attract private sectors, and ESG investing, etc. For example, the global ESG assets increases rapidly for the past decade, but there is very little on nutrition in it. Of the global venture capital financing in the amount of $612 billion invested in 2020, only 8% targeted agri-food sectors, of which nutrition is a tiny fraction. There are also huge opportunities in climate finances, but the situation is the same. Only 4% of climate finances go to agri-food sector, of which nutrition is again a tiny element. So with those opportunities that are in front of us, we need to collectively advocate and work on how to design investments to make larger impacts on nutrition, which is about the improving people's nutritional status, especially in the most vulnerable population groups and geographies. To be able to do that, we need to have a strategy that actually talks about investment and allow countries to make investment cases continuously so that they can actually start financing from domestic resources and pool resources from outside to catalyze their investments to make larger impacts and become accountable to what this money is achieving in terms of the impact on the people. Let me stop here, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyoko, and also Mira. We now invite some Q&A and discussion. So if you can just raise your hand, I'll try to get to you. Questions or items for discussion? Yes, please go ahead. And maybe I'll bring the microphone to you. Hopefully this.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Very interesting. You mentioned that in the past or traditionally, nutrition financing has come from humanitarian funding, and you mentioned that needs to change. But could you elaborate on why that is? What is it about humanitarian financing that prohibits nutrition efforts?
Get that? Maybe you can answer one at a time, then I'll get to the next one.
Okay, thank you for that really important question. The humanitarian assistance often is targeted towards the emergency situations when you start seeing those really the acutely malnourished, very thin children with big tummies, and they need to be treated, otherwise they would die. And the money is gathered, collected in order to save lives of those children, which is very, very important. However, there are the more children who are actually chronically malnourished, which is called stunting, that's the language that I used, who are on a day-to-day basis, they lack the nutrient foods, the caring practices. They suffer from infectious diseases. They don't necessarily die, but they are already malnourished, and their brains are actually constrained in terms of their full development capacity. So we actually have to think about both, the treating those acutely malnourished children and also preventing these chronic malnourishment conditions. And humanitarian assistance often only targets this acute, the conditions of malnutrition. And when it comes to chronic malnutrition, the more system-oriented interventions are needed, because they are actually, in many countries, almost half of the child population are actually suffering from malnutrition. It's not something that you get this money, you use it for this intervention here. It has to be a system based, the services and interventions that actually cover all of the children in the country in a sustainable manner. And humanitarian assistance often, that happens when the emergencies happen, and when the emergency situation is lifted, the donors are gone, so nothing is left. So, from these, the constraints, if we continue to rely on humanitarian assistance that come from donors, this donor or that donor, when it happens, we don't know. We can't actually prevent this chronic malnutrition that are happening in many more children in those countries. I hope that answers your question.
Next question. While we're warming up, yes, I will have to ask a question myself. As somebody who has worked previously in the area of development financing, I've often wondered the fact that most of the portfolios there are agriculture, health, education, and nutrition often gets added onto a subcomponent of those projects as opposed to a standalone initiative. Similarly, if you go to most governments, they will have a Ministry of Health and a Ministry of Agriculture, and nutrition seems to get lost between those very well set portfolios. Could you comment on how we can, if there is a need to actually have a standalone initiative on nutrition, or if we can get more out of these different portfolios that already exist?
Yes, thank you. Actually, when I started the career in the nutrition space, I often heard that nutrition is everybody's business, but nobody's responsibility. Exactly because it kind of falls through the cracks. And I hated this narrative. And that's, one of the reasons why I really actually wanted to work in the World Bank and work with Mira to actually, the think about nutrition as an investment that resonates different sectoral kind of mandates and objectives, and be able to create kind of the core benefits that nutrition can bring to different sectoral plans and investments. So I would say that there are nutrition focused, the projects and programs that can actually, package these nutrition interventions and bring nutrition outcomes upfront. However, there also need to be multi-sectoral, the integration of nutrition in other sectors. And often actually the nutrition programs are already designed as multi-sectoral investment. So we actually look at only the health sector interventions, but also agriculture sector, social protection sector, education, and in other sectors, because when there is an evidence that when the households are receiving not just one service or two services, but multiple services at the same time, they actually achieve better nutrition outcomes. So we have been working for quite some time to create nutrition multi-sectoral programs, projects and programs, working with other sectors in really pushing, the evidence and advocacy to really demonstrate the economic benefits of doing this as a multi-sectoral program.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I think my question is kind of a follow-up to the previous two questions. In your last slide, you mentioned all the alternative sources that the nutrition sector can seek to fund its initiatives. But I was wondering, given how crowded that pool of finance is, how do you think the nutrition sector can stand out to attract kind of more investment from those limited sources of funding?
Thank you. A very good question. It's not easy. It's been challenging, but we have come actually a long way. First of all, we have actually put together the evidence that is showing that if you invest in nutrition, you are actually getting investment returns. And then investment returns is put in the language of other sectors, such as the agriculture. Now we are, as I presented, we are closely working with the agriculture team to really look at how the repurposing agenda can incorporate nutrition, the elements into the mathematical equation, so that you can actually show that if you actually put nutrition into it, you're actually making your population healthier, which means you're actually gaining in terms of economic benefits in the longer term. Now, these days, the economists and, the policymakers in countries have actually started to look at, their investment in a slightly longer term, because, they really need the people to be healthier, people to be more productive. And that has become a kind of a core message of human capital, which actually helped us, the kind of put this message forward with the country decision makers. However, when it comes to, the really putting the nutrition elements into the investment designs, we still face this challenge that, everybody has different interests and different objectives, and it becomes more complex when we try to integrate those. However, I think we really have to kind of continue working on this multi-sectorality and the putting nutrition into other sectoral financing, because again, if we don't do that, we are actually going to lose in the longer term. And the way to do it actually really is to put the evidence on the table, I think.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do we have any questions from the online audience? Feel free to raise your hand virtually or just type it in. Any other questions, audience? Okay, looks like there's no more questions, Kyoko. I want to say thank you for your presentation and also for the great work that you're doing. And Mira, thank you for supporting the seminar. We thank you for your work. Let's give you a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.